Right, let's get stuck in, shall we? The government's plan to smash the gangs is plunged into chaos, if it wasn't already. 220 migrants crossed the Channel illegally into Britain today, taking the total for the year to just under 40,000. That's 140 more than the number of small boat migrants who arrived during the whole of last year, 2024. Despite poor weather conditions in the Channel, 3 boatloads of migrants managed to make the crossing today, well, yesterday on Wednesday. The total so far this year is almost 8,800 ahead of the 28,204 who arrived at the same point last year. And it gets worse for the Prime Minister's one-in, one-out scheme after a migrant deported under the plan, so we kicked them out back to France. Anyway, guess what happened? They came back into the UK by small boat again. He's now back in detention. Earlier this year, I spoke to former Labour Minister Bill Rammell on my old show, Ben Leo Tonight, on the migrant situation, and this is what he had to say. The fact of the matter is the numbers aren't coming down, are they? It's more than 50,000 since Labour took power last year. So you just wonder, I mean, where does this end? I know we've spoken in the past, Bill, you and I, you've said, you know, give it time. They've only been in power for 5, 6, 7, 8 months. When do we start saying, hang on a minute, and even people like you who are Labour supporters, former Labour Minister, when do you start saying, right, Prime Minister, something's not working?
11 months ago.
I think the building blocks are in place. So the deal with France, the border security bill, which is just becoming law, a significant ramping up of returns agreements. I expect that to start having an impact over the next 6 to 9 months.
I'm just wondering why I look so tanned in that clip. I look like a Donald Trump tribute. Well, I guess it was summer in the UK in August, wasn't it? Looking a bit paler here in DC. Anyway, on to more important matters. That was Bill Rammell, of course. My big point about going back to speak to the likes of Bill Rammell and seeing what the Labour heads have to say is, when do we have the ability to say to Labour, you've had enough time now, it's time to take responsibility? Because still now we're hearing, we inherited the Tories' mess, it's only been 15 months, there's not a lot of time. But in the US, as we're setting illegal migrant records in the UK, President Trump here in America is on track to set another kind of record. The administration is expected to significantly exceed the record number of illegals deported out of the United States. Since Trump's return to the Oval Office in January, the administration has deported over 500,000 illegal migrants. More than 2 million have left, either voluntarily or been forcibly kicked out. So it's a stark contrast, and it just goes to show what can be done if you have the political will. Well, let's get the take now of former Tory MP Daniel Kaczynski. Daniel, thank you for your company at this early hour. Really appreciate it. First of all, it's a pretty dismal record now so far from this Labour government. Have they run out of time? Do we hear those excuses from the likes of Bill Rammell, the former Labour minister, saying we need enough time, we inherited the Tories' mess? Can that no longer be wheeled out as an excuse, Daniel?
Well, of course, you quite rightly identified the stark contrast between our own country and the United States of America. They had a horrendous problem across the Mexican-American border, and now all of a sudden that huge tide of people has just stopped. And clearly, President Trump has instructed his neighbors in Mexico that unless they police their own side of the border, there will be consequences for them in terms of tariffs and other sanctions. Whereas we just give the French more and more money, and basically they refuse to police their own coastline. So, you know, as long as this lack of cooperation from France continues, we will continue to suffer these unprecedented numbers coming into the United Kingdom. But the person that's really to blame, or the group that's really to blame, of course, is the European Union. In their fixation to create an artificial supranational state, they have dismantled all of the borders on our continent. I don't think that is the case anywhere else in the world. And so they have facilitated the free movement of criminal gangs, narcotics, and illegal migrants across the whole of our continent. So we should be suing the European Union until they resurrect some of their internal border controls.
Hello, I'm Bev Turner. Now, it can feel like the money in our bank accounts at the moment does not keep up with the cost of living, and maybe there's a solution. I'm here today with the CEO of TallyMoney, Cameron Parry. Cameron, what is TallyMoney?
Well, Bev, with TallyMoney, you get a current account and a debit card, but instead of pounds, you use milligrams of gold as your everyday money.
So why gold?
Gold traditionally is a great store of value. It has, on average, gone up at over 11% per annum for the last 25 years against the pound. It's tripled in value in the last decade. And in the last 2 years alone, it's increased by 50% against the pound. Banks' savings products just can't compete with that level of growth.
But this isn't just about gold. This is about a currency that you guys have created at TallyMoney. Explain it to me as though I'm an idiot.
So, look, people need to be able to hold their earnings and build their savings in a money that retains its value and remains in their legal control and remains theirs to access, away from government control.
Great. You had me at not exposed to government control.
You should feel safe and happy with your money. You should have peace of mind the more money you see in your bank balance, and that's the type of thing we're trying to deliver and give people choice in the type of money they get to use every day.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Cameron. Thank you.
Yeah, what a great idea. And I guess, slightly off topic, that's what Brexit was about. And that's why so many people have a problem with, I'd argue as well, multiculturalism. There is a beauty, the beauty of humanity, correct me if you disagree, but the beauty of humanity is going to different nations, experiencing their language, their culture, their way of living, maybe using different currency, picking up a note and, you know, admiring the just silly things like admiring the note. When you have something like the European Union, who they want the same flag, they want the same army, they want the same currency, they want no borders, they want the millions of people living under the same roof and the same authority, it completely destroys the magic of life and exploration and adventure. Again, slightly off topic, but I think it's quite pertinent to the migration situation. I'm going to bring in my panel now to have a chat with you, if you don't mind. The Exec Director at Unleash Prosperity, Tim Dosher, and the foreign correspondent and journalist, Sarah Firth. Tim, we've got a question for our former Tory MP here, Daniel.
Yeah, I'm curious, Daniel, where is the motivation here to fix this problem? Is this purely political, this one in, one out? Because obviously this isn't going to work. It's never going to work. You have to have moral clarity when you go into a situation like this to enforce the law. So where is the push for this? Have the people made their voices clear, or is this just Labour ignoring them?
Well, of course, we've just seen that one of these people that's been returned to France has come back again. And it'll be interesting to see just how many of the returned people that we send back to France ultimately return back in the United Kingdom. What is France doing with them when they are sent back? Clearly, France is not taking the action to expel them to another part of the European Union, so they will stay in the Pas-de-Calais, waiting for an opportunity to try again. The whole thing is very, very shambolic. But can I just make the point? There are 2 or 3 major pinch point areas in the Mediterranean where illegal migrants use other countries in the Mediterranean as a springboard to get into the European Union and then ultimately to Britain. Libya, of course, is one of those. And quite frankly, the United Kingdom ought to be helping countries like Libya and Morocco that are the gateway of these huge movements of people. And at the moment, Libya still has sanctions from its time during the Civil War. So I think the United Kingdom has a responsibility to take a lead in helping these frontline states, clearly something that the European Union, all of its collective resources, is failing to do because they're failing to police their external borders. The United Kingdom, of course, is a magnet, because a disproportionate number of those illegal migrants will come to the United Kingdom because, A, of our language, which is universally known around the world, but also our extraordinary high social welfare payments, which they're attracted to here.
Yeah, you've got to stop the pull factors, you've got to stop the hotels, you've got to stop the bus passes, the dentistry, the Wi-Fi, you know, it's a complete disgrace. And also, talking of Libya, I mean, if you want to keep bashing France, why not? I'm game for that. Wasn't it France who led the coalition of bombing the hell out of Libya and Gaddafi? Hillary Clinton, this side of the pond, saying we came, we saw, we killed him. You know, Libya is one of the biggest hellholes. I mean, it's the biggest slave nation on earth.
I do want to just say really quick that we did try that under Biden. We tried to go into the other nations where the people were coming from. We need to give them money. We need to work with them in order to stop them from coming. But what we didn't do is we didn't close our border, and that's what Trump has done, and he's prioritized. And I think that that's probably what the UK is missing. Again, that moral clarity to close down the border.
Sarah, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, Daniel, thank you very much for taking my question, sir. You spoke about what Labour is doing right now, you know, being shambolic. I don't think there's anyone in Britain or here in America really who would disagree with that outcome so far. You know, huge numbers still coming across under Labour despite this one in, one out policy, and now we've heard one back in again. But I am interested, so you know, the Conservatives were in power for a very long time. Billions were spent. You know, you guys promised to take back control of the borders. You know, here in America, President Trump has shown the impact that having the political will to tackle this issue can have. So I want to ask, you know, it's all well and good to criticise what Labour is doing right now. What is the sticking point when it comes to British politics, the way that we approach this issue that means that the Conservatives and now Labour just simply are not getting this done?
Well, clearly we're party to a horrendous number of sort of like international protocols and agreements, like being in the European Court of Human Rights and all the rest of it, and our own judges' decisions are overturned by foreign courts. The pendulum has swung too far away from the state and people who want to protect the state and control our borders towards the rights of people who break into our country illegally and want to basically jump the queue. Very few of these people in these boats are people in wheelchairs, disabled or blind people or children. They're just young men who have basically paid criminal gangs £5,000 or £6,000 to jump the queue. And quite frankly, it's appalling that they get the sanctuary that they get. But can I just also say that in reality, as long as I've made this point already, but we will continue to have this problem until the European Union is prepared to resurrect its borders. We are starting to see mass flows of drugs and criminal gangs operating across the whole of the United Kingdom, coming from the European Union as well. And so that's a big problem for us. But finally, Australia found the right country to work with, Nauru, a Pacific island in the middle of a Pacific island. They sent their illegal migrants to Nauru. It worked because there were no job opportunities in Nauru. So the illegal migrants very quickly told the criminal gangs, don't send us to Australia. The mistake the Conservatives made, and I want to be very critical of the Conservative Party, is putting all of our eggs in one basket, which is Rwanda. Crazy country to have chosen, a country that itself had been through a internecine bloodbath a few decades ago, and the British people did not have the confidence that this was the right country to partner up with in terms of sending illegal migrants overseas. It should have been a British overseas territory that we have total control over. That we have total control over. A place like, you know, I'm not going to mention them, but there are 15 British overseas territories around the world, and those jurisdictions we have total control over. So the Conservatives made a horrendous mistake, in my view, and I spoke out against it on the floor of the House of Commons when I was a member of Parliament, that we made a mistake in selecting that country.
Yeah, I mean, you've got Ascension Island. I mean, I don't know the logistics of the Chagos Islands. We're now paying 40 billion quid over a century to give away the Chagos Islands. I mean, you could have done that. Who knows? And also, just talking of Rwanda, Daniel, I know you say we needed other options aside from Rwanda, but still to this day, maybe you can answer, why did Rishi Sunak call an election when he did? Rwanda wasn't off the ground. Inflation was coming down. Interest rates were coming down. It all looked like it could have, you know, got a little bit better for the Tories towards the end of the year, but for some bizarre reason, maybe you know the reason, I don't know, but he called an election. Why did he do that then?
Well, he didn't inform, obviously, his own members of Parliament nor his own cabinet. He just went to the palace and asked for a dissolution of Parliament. I very much hope the answer to it comes out one day. I have my own suspicions, but I don't think Conservative Party activists...
What are they, Daniel?
Oh, share them, Daniel.
Well, I'm sure it will come out one day, but all I can say is he made a horrendous mistake, and a mistake which devastated the Conservative Party. party. But then again, you know, even if we had waited another 6 months, the mistakes that we had made in the rotation of leaders over the last 3 years became a pantomime. And I'm afraid the British people had enough. They were going to throw us out one way or the other.
Yeah, I kind of think when Boris was ousted for, again, fairly controversial thing to say, I don't really care. Some people will say he wasn't ousted for crusty M&S sandwiches in Downing Street. Of course, it was Chris Pincher who eventually proved the cherry on top. But I think when all that nonsense happened, that was kind of the beginning of the end for the Tory party. Daniel, really appreciate your company tonight and staying up late. Thank you very much, former Tory MP Daniel Kaczynski. gbnews.com/your say. Let me know what you think about that. A spokesman for the Home Office has said, "We will not accept any abuse of our borders and will do everything in our power to remove those without the legal right to be here. Individuals who are returned under the pilot and subsequently attempt to re-enter the UK illegally will be removed." Fine. I mean, you're not meant to really, when we read these rights of replies, you're not really meant to comment again afterwards and push back because the Home Office don't have a chance to come back at it. But when they're saying they'll be removed again, illegals will be removed, you're just going to have the same situation where they're plonked back in France, allowed to run riot, and they're going to be getting the next train or bus back to Calais. It's just insanity.